Hello everyone, I am the sleep paralysis guy, and in this episode of the Uninvited guest series, I looked up old comments, posts, and submissions from Reddit users who've had creepy experiences with sleep paralysis. Not being able to move while feeling like you're about to die can be a very terrifying experience. So sit back, relax as we dive into the darkness together because you are not alone. This post comes from user BanXEHE. This is the second time that this has happened to me this month. I usually sleep on my side because that is supposed to decrease your chances of sleep paralysis as opposed to laying on your back, and I used to never see things. I can't say the same about recently. Sometimes I have dreams where I die and then wake up again and die again and again in different ways, but the other nights began with sleep paralysis. I was sleeping on my side expecting an uneventful night of sleep, but awoke in the middle of the night to see a shadow of a person and was instantly filled with dread. I closed my eyes and fell back asleep, only to get stuck in a cycle of dream deaths. I woke up again in the middle of the night and didn't want to go back to sleep, but I was paralyzed. This time I was laying on my stomach. Feeling pressure on top of me, I fought my way out of the paralysis and raised my head, but very distinctively felt a hand grab my hair and shove my head back into the bed and back into my nightmare. This repeated several times throughout the night, and so I couldn't tell if I was really awake anymore, or if I could even escape it. Shaking, I moved out to my siblings' room and slept there for the rest of the night. Something happened again last night. I woke up and saw someone pull a blanket over my head so I couldn't breathe. At some point, I managed to yell out to my little sibling, but they couldn't hear me. I'm gonna try and sleep with the lights on tonight. This post comes from Reddit user Jesterhead. My first experience wasn't as bad but still freaked me out was when I lived in my first apartment. I woke up paralyzed, of course, and noticed a bright figure on my wall. After staring at it for about 5 seconds, it flew over my head and screamed in my ear. My ears were ringing bad, and my head felt like it was going to pop. I started shaking and hid under my blanket after I fully woke up. For the longest time, I thought it was a ghost. My second experience, which was still worse, still gives me chills thinking about it. I fell asleep on my couch with my face buried in the back of it. I woke up to a moaning sound, like a goblin enjoying itself is the only way I can describe it. When I opened my eyes, there was 2 yellow eyeballs staring back at me in this really deep voice laughing. It echoed in my head. After the laughter stopped, my ears started ringing and had this really intense vibration that caused the worst boost of adrenaline I've ever felt. I called my girlfriend at the time, in tears, trying to explain what happened. This next post comes from user Fig Newton. I got a lovely back rub once. I'd fallen asleep on the couch on my back, which is weird for me because I'm usually a stomach sleeper. I was in the state of drifting in between dreaming and waking up, where reality and dreams kind of nest together. I recognized the sleep paralysis, but was still pretty out of it. Someone behind me moved my hair aside and started rubbing my shoulders with just magical heat and pressure. It suddenly hit me that I was home alone. But I wasn't scared, so I managed to ask, "Who are you anyways?" and looked back at the dark shadowy form raised up a hand and waved at me as it dissipated into thin air, and there I was awake and alone. But so relaxed and my shoulders were still tingly, I just decided it was one of my spirit guardians helping me through a rough week and left it at that. I wish they'd come more. This next post comes from user Melmots. I had a really bad episode of sleep paralysis last night and now I'm scared of going to sleep. Even if I know I really should because 1, I have a long day ahead of me. 2, because I know being sleep deprived makes my episodes worse. I'd kind of gotten used to my sleep paralysis demons, or whatever you wish to call them. They either stand in the corner of the room or sit at the foot of my bed. However, tonight's creature was different. I heard the door of my room opening, the footsteps getting closer to my bed. I assumed my mother was checking in on me, kinda weird in the middle of the night. Instead of I got this weird humanoid thing hovering over my bed at some point. It caressed my cheek. It was terrifying, and it took me a long time to wake up for real. I feel so horribly tired. This next comment comes from user HydroFire2455. I have sleep paralysis constantly for a really long time, but I've never had my eyes open all the way when it happens. Either they're stuck closed, or I really don't want to open them. Normally I just lay there and deal with the screeching and static, but this time I decided to open my eyes all the way. Everything was blue. There were stripes of dots everywhere, tinting everything slightly black. Then I felt him, a horned shadow creature, place its back on my neck, making it harder to breathe. Between the demon on my shoulder and the shifting colors on my room, I was terrified, needless to say. I managed to close my eyes and wait in the terror until the episode passed. This post comes from user Modern Argonaut. It was 2 months ago, so it was really recent, and after it happened I tried to remember and explain every detail to my friends. It has been a uniquely special experience, even though I was scared to death. I had a few sleep paralysis experiences before, but I didn't know who I really was and what I wanted to do with my life, so I didn't have any psychological strength or willpower. A few years ago, I started developing mentally as a stronger person, and right now, the difference between the old me and the actual me is like day and night, and I think this is a very important point in my story. I was dreaming that I was walking through my neighborhood, and after I detected a few non-logical things, I realized that I was in fact dreaming. After I realized that, I woke up from my dream, but not fully. My body was obviously unable to make a move, and I found myself facing the hallway. And all of a sudden, I started to hear voices saying, "It's coming, it's coming." When I say hear, I mean in the sense that my instincts were telling me this. It's weird to explain, to be honest, but the silent voices kept telling me, "It's coming, prepare yourself." Well, something was coming, and I knew right away what it was. My worst fears made flesh. I just felt it in my core. I felt the dread and the pressure. I don't know why I knew it, but I did. I couldn't see it yet because it was still walking towards my room, but somehow I knew what form this being had taken, and it wasn't pretty. But I knew that once I got to see it, it's going to be way uglier and crazier than I would expect. Not going to lie, I was scared as hell, but I started to feel something, and thank God I started to feel it. Something inside me, which I think was my shadow. If you read the Jung, you know what I mean. The way I felt about it was that my shadow was excited that it was a unique experience, and I could gain something from it, and pissed because being angry and furious was the only way to get strength to fight my worst fears. So yeah, I was feeling two perspectives confronting the situation. Me scared and wanting it to stop and escape it, and my shadow self wanting to see this fear made flesh so I could face it, get stronger and beat the shit out of it. And I could feel a smile coming out of my shadow. Not a happy smile, but a dreadful smile, giving the vibes of, I can be a monster too, and you will regret this. Like a beast showing his teeth before a fight. And just when I knew this thing was a few footsteps away, I started forcing my body to move with all my might, and I could finally escape the paralysis. After fully waking up, I sat there and I stood for a few minutes, analyzing what just happened. It was the scariest shit I've ever felt, but the best sleep paralysis experience I could have asked for, because I knew something inside was strong enough to face my worst fears, even though in the end, my rational self wanted to escape. This next submission comes from user Thug Destroyer. I have a little sister and she's 9 years old. One night, I thought I felt her crawling in my bed because I heard her say, "I'm scared, can I sleep here?" I was so tired that I didn't even acknowledge her. Looking back, I was already in full-blown sleep paralysis. When I opened my eyes, I saw her, the infamous old hag, something I've only heard stories of, and immediately closed my eyes out of sheer terror. My episodes don't normally last this long, and when I opened my eyes again, she was a lot closer than before, and I felt that at that moment, I was going to die. Out of panic, I tried making my sister wake me up with the slightest movement of my fingers, because I felt her arm over me while this was happening. The witch was getting closer. Suddenly her face met mine, and thankfully, it was only for a split second, because I jolted up and came back to consciousness. What scared me next is that my sister wasn't sleeping next to me. If you have any sleep paralysis stories and would like to share them, message me at sleepparalysisguy@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and make sure to like and subscribe for more spooky content like this so we can grow together as a community, because you are not alone.